Hi everybody, welcome back to Skin School. I'm Amanda Gordon with the Facial RX and I hope you're excited about today's lesson. Let's get started. Okay, so far in our lessons we've covered the top two layers of the skin, the epidermis and the dermis. But today we're going to focus on the next layer down, which is commonly known as the hypodermis, the subcutaneous layer, or the adipose tissue layer. So adipose is just a fancy word that means fat. And we can actually find this tissue all throughout our bodies. The first place that we see it is inside the abdominal and chest cavities surrounding our viscera or internal organs, and this is what we refer to as visceral fat. The second place that we find it is our focus today, and that is the layer just below the dermis in the skin called the subcutaneous fat. Adipose or fat tissue doesn't just sit around and make us feel lumpy and bumpy when we have too much of it. It actually has several really important functions. The first function is it helps to insulate the body against the cold, especially the internal organs. The second thing it does is help to store up energy for later use. A third important function of the adipose tissue is it serves to protect and cushion important structures that are surrounding it. So the last function that I'd like to quickly touch on regarding the adipose tissue is its role in helping to maintain and balance certain hormone levels in our bodies. The majority of the fat that we do find on the human body is going to be found in that subcutaneous layer just below the skin surface. As we take an up-close look at this layer of tissue, with the exception of a few blood vessels and connective fibers, we can see that fat cells are just about the only thing that this tissue consists of. Now, even though we're commonly taught that there are three layers of skin, the epidermis, dermis, and the adipose tissue layer, because the tissue in this layer is so vastly different from the two layers above it, there's common disagreement as to whether or not this should even be considered as a layer of the skin. This is why sometimes you'll see references to 2 layers of skin versus 3. Now, let's take a minute to look at the actual fat cell itself. These little guys are called adipocytes, and they have other organelles and structures just like any other cell does, such as a nucleus, cytoplasm, and mitochondria. One of the main differences between the adipocyte cells and other cells within the body is the outer shell or membrane of the cell is actually much stronger, and it makes this cell much more resilient. Another unique feature about these cells is a large fat reservoir or storage unit within the cell that stores up excess fat that can be used as energy later on. Now, when somebody is actively trying to lose weight, the body will tap into these fat reservoirs within the cell and use that as energy. This causes the cells to shrink, but they don't disappear. As we can see here, the body does have a small, thin layer of fat cells called the fat reserve. Now, this is essential fat that we have to have on our bodies in order to survive. Now, when our body detects that it only has our fat reserve cells to work with, in an effort to save those, it will turn its attention to other energy sources, such as our muscle. So at this point, you might be asking yourself the question, I've lost a bunch of weight, the fat cells have shrunk, but they're not completely gone. What's to keep them from filling up again if I eat a fatty meal or two? Well, that can't happen. But there's one way that we have discovered that you can completely destroy a fat cell, and it's through a freezing process called cool sculpting. And this is a non-invasive procedure where you freeze the fat cells in the subcutaneous layer and they're effectively destroyed. So as we all know, sometimes our bodies can kind of have a mind of their own and go haywire. So to finish out this lesson, I'd like to touch on one specific anomaly that can happen in this particular layer of tissue, and it's what we call a lipoma. Now, doctors most likely classify these as non-cancerous tumors But as you can see here, they're really just an accumulation of excess fat cells that form inside a type of fibrous sac or membrane. And as we take a look at this picture, we see an example of a lipoma on a client's forearm before and after the removal. Now, on rare occasions, individuals have been known to develop what we call giant lipomas, and these can usually be found on the neck and the back. We don't really understand what causes these lipomas to form, but genetics does seem to play a role in it because they do tend to run in families. But the good news is most of these can be easily removed with a simple surgical procedure that can be performed in a dermatologist or doctor's office. And to close out with just a little fun fact, the largest lipoma ever recorded was removed from the shoulder of a 26-year-old man, and it weighed in at 48.5 pounds. Pretty big. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for watching. We've now completed our videos on the top 3 layers of the skin. And if you have any questions or comments, please make sure you write them in the comment section. I will respond to them as quickly as possible. If you have any video suggestions or things that you would like to learn about, please let me know. Make sure you like and subscribe so you will get all the updates to my newest video releases. In the meantime, everybody have a great weekend.